Airports are meant for departures and arrivals, not disappearances. Tonight, we're at Gate 47, where one woman missed her flight. But by the time the plane was supposed to land, it wasn't just the passengers who were missing. Rachel Carter sat by the wide glass window of the terminal, staring out into the rainy night. Flight 237 to Seattle, delayed. Again, her coffee had long gone cold. Her phone, completely useless, had no signal. She sighed, nervously checking her boarding pass for what felt like the 10th time. Across from her, a man in a crisp navy suit sat completely still. He had no luggage. He was just staring, not at her, but almost through her. She felt that familiar, creeping awareness, that cold prickle on your neck when you know you're being watched. She tried to brush it off. It's an airport. People stare all the time. But when she glanced up again, the man was gone. At 11:43 p.m., the loudspeaker finally echoed through the nearly empty terminal. Final boarding call for Flight 237, now boarding at Gate 47. Relief washed over Rachel. She grabbed her bag and hurried to the gate, but the boarding door was locked shut. The attendant gave her an apologetic smile. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but that flight has already departed." Rachel was stunned. "What? You just called final boarding?" The attendant's smile faltered, her eyes clouded with confusion. "Ma'am, that flight left 2 hours ago." Rachel felt the world tilt. She looked around. The gate area, just moments ago bustling with the last few passengers, was now eerily empty, dark. The flight monitors flickered with static. There were no staff, no other passengers. There was just her own reflection staring back from the dark glass. And behind it, in the reflection, she saw a figure walking down the empty jet bridge. She spun around, but the jet bridge was sealed, the corridor dark and silent. At the airport help desk, the night manager patiently checked his records, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no Flight 237 on the schedule. Not for today, not for this week." Her hands trembled as she held out her boarding pass, but as she looked down, the print was fading before her very eyes, like old ink dissolving in water. Panic set in. Rachel tried to call her friend, Josh. The call wouldn't connect. She frantically scrolled through her messages, but all her recent chats were gone. Even her call history was wiped clean, completely erased. And then, a new message appeared on her screen from an unknown number. It had only 5 words. "You shouldn't have stayed behind." Just then, the airport lights flickered violently, plunging the concourse into momentary darkness. From far down the corridor, she heard the faint, echoing sound of a child's laughter. Compelled by a feeling she couldn't explain, Rachel followed the sound to the old, abandoned Terminal C. It was closed for renovations, covered in dust sheets and silence. Except for one impossible thing. A single arrival screen, inexplicably lit up, displaying the words, "Flight 237, now boarding." She crept closer, her heart pounding in her chest. As she watched, faces began to flash on the screen. Passenger photos. Their eyes blinked, their heads turned slightly, as if they were alive inside the monitor. "What is this?" she whispered. The screen seemed to whisper back, in a voice identical to her own. "You boarded the wrong time." Rachel ran. She bolted down the corridors, but they seemed to stretch into an endless labyrinth. The gate numbers repeated themselves. 45, 46, 47, then 45, 46, 47 again. Every turn, every desperate sprint led her right back to where she started. Gate 47. On the wall, a large clock ticked ominously, its hands moving backward. She found herself in a deserted security office, the only light coming from the bank of monitors glowing in the dark. On one screen, she saw footage of herself from earlier that evening, walking confidently into the terminal. But the video loop just played over and over. She never came out. Suddenly, a voice crackled to life over a two-way radio on the desk. "Gate 47 incident repeating. Subject is aware." Her blood ran cold. "Who's speaking? What's happening?" she shouted into the empty room. The static hissed and popped before the voice answered, cold and disembodied. "You didn't miss the flight, Rachel. You never landed." The very walls around her began to hum with a low mechanical thrum. She reached out and touched one. It was cold, metallic, and felt like it was breathing. The airport was alive. Down the hall, rows of abandoned suitcases began to move on their own, sliding across the polished floor. A luggage cart rolled past, its wheels screeching softly in the silence. And far down the runway, through the rain-streaked glass, a plane stood waiting, its doors open, its lights blinking a sinister red. Drawn by something deeper than fear, a strange sort of inevitability, Rachel walked out onto the tarmac. The rain lashed down, soaking her in seconds, her footsteps the only sound against the hum of the phantom engines. She walked up the stairs and into the plane. The cabin was filled with silence. Every seat was occupied by a passenger, sitting perfectly still. Their eyes were open, staring blankly ahead. They weren't breathing, and as she looked closer, her breath caught in her throat. Their faces, they were all her. Every single one. She stumbled backward, trying to flee, but the cockpit door creaked open. A pilot's voice, calm and familiar, called out, "You're late." She peered into the cockpit, and her heart stopped. The pilot was the man in the Navy suit from the terminal. He turned to face her, and this time he smiled. "We've been waiting for you, Rachel." The engines roared to life, shaking the plane violently. Rachel grabbed onto a seat to steady herself, screaming, "Where are we going?" The man leaned in close, his voice a whisper against the deafening noise. "Back to where you left us." A bolt of lightning illuminated the sky, and the entire cabin dissolved into a blinding white light. The morning news played on a small TV in a cafe near the airport. An anchor reported, "Authorities are still investigating the unsolved disappearance of Flight 237, which went missing with all passengers and crew in 2017. A waitress sighed and turned off the screen. In a corner booth, a customer quietly sipped her coffee. She wore a brown coat, and her eyes were weary, lost. It was Rachel Carter. That night, airport staff once again reported strange electrical flickers at the long-abandoned Gate 47. Security cameras captured the ghostly image of a woman standing by the glass window. Same clothes, same bag. Her lips were moving silently. When they enhanced the audio, they heard her whispering the same 4 words over and over. "I missed my flight." Deep in the FBI archives, the manifest for the lost Flight 237 lists 114 names. But there's a final handwritten entry. Passenger 115, Rachel Carter. The timestamp next to her name, boarded, 11:43 p.m. 2 hours after the plane officially took off. They say that every night a ghost plane lands on an unused runway, untracked, unseen. And if you stand and look through the window at Gate 47 for long enough, you'll see them, the passengers, forever waiting to arrive, and one woman, forever trying to leave. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next descent into the unknown.